Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Life Show, Week 8 Rankings Edition. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz. It is a great day to be great. It's a great day to get through all of the must-starts, the risers, the sicko starts, and even some Hartitz heaters along the way to get those fantasy lineups right for Week 8. And as always on this Thursday edition of the show, I am joined by the one, the only Fantasy Life Director of Analytics, all-around baller, shot caller, Dwain "The Rock" McFarland. What's up, man?
Thank you, Ian. I never know if I can live up to the intro. You've been giving me that intro for years, and I just want to tell you how much I appreciate it. I appreciate it so much that I've said positive things about Romeo Dobbs. I've done it on a show. We might talk. Who knows? We might talk about him again here today. And I've written about him in 2 different articles, Ian. So hopefully, I'm making up for all the times that I would not acquiesce to your assertion that Romeo Dobbs is really good at football.
I got to pay some respect to the legend Ken Brew, been a longtime staple in the Cincinnati AM radio scene. Every time I go on, it is a treat. But Dwain, his intros are unlike any I've ever heard. He'll be like, Grantland Rice cannot hold a candle to this man. He stomps through the hallways of PFF, and everyone just cannot believe his presence. Just amazing stuff from Mr. Brew. Always enjoy that one.
That's awesome.
I'm just trying to do my 2 cents here. But again, guys, great episode on tap today. As always, we are going to take a good, 10, 15 minutes after the show to answer your start sit questions. So if you're on the chat, thanks for hanging out and go ahead and send those our way. We will do everything in our power to get those fantasy lineups right. So let's get into the show then. It's time for our DraftKings opening lines. It is Thursday, Mr. Dwain, which means there are plenty of injuries to get updated with. Luckily, we actually seem to have some good news for a change. Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson has been practicing in a limited fashion now back-to-back days with the hamstring injury. We still haven't exactly gotten official word. It'd be a lot cooler if the Ravens could just tell us if he's going to be starting or not. But that said, Dwain, I would think if there was a big question mark here, the Ravens probably wouldn't still be sitting at 6.5 point favorites with that line being live. Usually if there is, actual questions, they don't even offer the odds. Is that kind of how you're feeling about this?
Yeah, that's how I'm handling it in the projection model, with Vegas looking the way that it looks right now. And look, I mean, that's against the Bears, who have won more games than them. Obviously, I know odds makers are looking at the fact that, Lamar was 1-3 on the season, but 3 of those losses were against really good teams. The Bills were one of them. The Chiefs were one. I think the Lions were the other one. So it's been a tough road to start for Lamar as far as the matchups. But seeing them as 6.5 point favorites over the Bears, yes, it is at home, but I think that line would be closer to even, Ian, if we didn't think that we were going to have Lamar Jackson, maybe even slightly favorites to the Bears. So I am handling this as though Lamar Jackson is going to play. And we'll talk about some of his pass catchers here in a little bit, like Zay Flowers.
Also, tentatively expecting Tyrod Taylor to play. He's been limited with a knee injury throughout practice. And Michael Penix, who has a knee bruise going on. Maybe a little bit more up in the air. We could see Kirk Cousins otherwise, so not completely in the clear, but the fact he is practicing at all, at least a somewhat good sign. We'll note that Panthers quarterback Bryce Young continues to not practice with that ankle sprain. We are expecting Andy Dalton to start for the Panthers. And we also have Commanders quarterback Jaden Daniels officially ruled out with that hamstring injury. It will be Marcus Mariota season here on Monday night against the Chiefs. Moving on to running back, Dwain, we are going to get Vikings RB Aaron Jones suiting up for Thursday Night Football. If you guys are listening to us on Friday, you already know how he played, but yeah, go ahead and get Aaron Jones in that RB3 range. A slight downgrade for Jordan Mason, who now comes in outside of our top 20 in our Fantasy Life consensus ranks. Breece Hall limited again with a knee injury. No real concerns here. We'll just remind everyone to stash Isaiah Davis if possible, with Breece being the subject of many trade talks. Also have DeAndre Swift limited with the groin, and Chiefs RB Kareem Hunt not practicing with an ankle and knee injury. So that would be, I think, be the most consequential one, Dwain. Honestly, if we had no Kareem Hunt to worry about, I think that makes Isaiah Pacheco a much easier start and maybe even gets Brashard Smith in the sicko start flex territory.
Yeah, and this is going to be a theme today. When you have 6 teams on bye, a lot of people move up the ranks, Ian. So those 2 players would definitely be in the crosshairs. Last week, before the fourth quarter, though, after we lost Kareem Hunt, and I believe it was the second or third drive, you mentioned it. I know it was really early in the game, and then he ended up coming back for a series, but then he left and didn't return. Before it was at the stage where it was the blowout, and they were essentially letting some of the backups play, it was mostly Pacheco, just so you guys know. Brashard Smith, yes, did flash in the box score, but just realize almost all of that work came on that final drive. So I would expect Pacheco to handle the majority of the work. It would obviously be a bump up for Brashard Smith. I would say we don't want to go crazy. If you're playing in a deeper league, obviously you've got Brashard Smith's stash. It would be a chance for him to shine. If he had a few more touches, looks really good. Who knows? Maybe that opens a little more playing time for him. But yeah, if we don't have Kareem Hunt, that's going to move Pacheco inside the top 24 on a week like this. So we'll be definitely monitoring that one. Just the first day of practice is Monday Night Football. So a lot of times, we'll see a player miss on their first day, which is typically, Wednesday that we hear about, but then they come back Thursday, which that'll be tomorrow for the Chiefs since they play on Monday. So we'll see what it looks like tomorrow. Right now, I'm leaving it, though, as Kareem Hunt's playing for now.
In those ranks, Dwayne has Pacheco RB24. I have him RB21. If we did get confirmation, no Kareem Hunt, I could see both of us potentially moving ahead of guys like Ramondre Stevenson, Alvin Kamara, perhaps Chase Brown. So I'm not going to go too crazy with it, but certainly would be someone you can feel a little bit better about starting. But let's face it, Dwayne, 6 teams on bye. I doubt too many have a choice. Over in the wide receiver streets, good news for the Commanders at least. Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel now firmly on track to return on Monday night. Each gotten full practices here on Thursday. So good stuff there. Obviously not having Jaden Daniels under center sucks. It's going to leave these guys more so as borderline wide receiver twos as opposed to must start options. But again, getting healthier, good news there for the near future. Also have Emeka Egbuka returning to a limited practice. We are expecting him to suit up this week, as we are with DJ Moore with a hip issue. Although, Dwayne, we did not have the same level of confidence with Eagles wide receiver A.J. Brown dealing with another hamstring injury. He has not practiced at all this week. So unfortunate for a player with, A.J. Brown, just big name that we haven't gotten exactly more, just, I guess, reports on this injury. I'm not exactly sure when it happened. Clearly, he iced the game at the end of last week, so it didn't seem like anything was bothering him then. We've seen AJ have to kind of manage his hamstring throughout the years. I don't know why, Dwayne. Maybe it is just the fact that he's been kind of, not every year banged up with this or everything, but I'm a little less scared about this hamstring injury compared to other wide receivers. Does that make any sense at all?
Yeah, I mean, we have certain wide receivers that when they go to play through an injury, we have been burned severely bad. Tee Higgins, right? And we had Hillgate or whatever it was called last year, where it was like, okay, if he walks up the hill this way, he's going to be playing and he's healthy. If he walks up the hill the other way, he is not. I think that was the great Andrew Cooper that found that one, which was great, which was funny from him. But what I would say would be this: if we did have AJ Brown out, which two practices in a row of not practicing is not good. So we need to see at least a limited practice tomorrow. Ideally, we would see a full practice. That would make us feel a lot better. But if we didn't have Devontae Smith, or if we didn't have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith right now, I've got his wide receiver 16. Ian, your wide receiver 18. I honestly would move Devontae Smith all the way up to where A.J. Brown is now. He's outperformed A.J. Brown to this point in the year. Now, their target share is still a slight lean to AJB, 1 percentage point ahead. But Devontae Smith's playing absolutely great. Now, what's funny about these two guys is the games they've smashed together. And it's been the games where the Eagles are like, we're going to throw the ball this game. And so we don't exactly know when those games are going to happen. But over the last 3 to 4 games, they've been much more willing to throw the ball. So Devontae Smith against the New York Giants, Ian, I would have all the way inside the top 7 or 8 receivers. I think once you get to Courtland Sutton, because he plays the Cowboys, is where it gets interesting. But with just him and no AJB, I think I would move him ahead of Sutton just because I think Devontae Smith is a better player than Courtland Sutton. Then you get to Egbuka, who's dealing with an injury. So I could see moving him past that. And then I've got Olave. You've got Olave lower than that. But Olave is dealing with an ankle injury. So I could see getting as high as wide receiver 6, man, which would put him right behind Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Rashee Rice, and Drake London. Drake London gets the Dolphins.
Nope.
So, I mean, I'm not moving him ahead of Drake London. But Devontae Smith would be, needless to say, he's a top 10 wide receiver, maybe as high as 6. So you would obviously be super excited about that if you are the Devontae Smith manager, especially on a week where you have 6 teams on bye.
I know people have mentioned could you imagine the numbers A.J. Brown will be putting up in a more pass-happy offense? That's kind of the tired, we've heard that story. Wired guys is Devonta Smith in a much more pass-happy offense. He is so good at football. I will say we did have Eagles reporter Jeff McClain state yesterday before we got the second DMP that while AJB was not practicing, from what he can understand, he's tracking towards playing Sunday versus Giants. So maybe just more rest management than anything. Again, continue to keep your eye on that as we get into Friday. Otherwise, guys, we have Garrett Wilson Wilson, Calvin Ridley, Nico Collins, Christian Kirk, all not practicing. And again, with back-to-back DMPs, I am actively not expecting them to play for the time being. Also, in the trade streets, Dwayne, speaking of Chris Olave tending to that ankle, he actually is alongside Rashid Shaheed as two wide receivers being monitored by wide receiver needy teams per Fox Sports' Jordan Schultz. We also have heard from CBS reporter Jonathan Jones that the Bills are believed to be looking at wide receivers. Do you have a dream match for the Buffalo Bills, Dwayne?
Man, if the Buffalo Bills would play Chris Olave in a full-time role, yeah, like he would by far be their best receiving weapon on the team. And my long-held conviction around this is like when you have a player this good, it will force, teams to kind of adjust like their priors, which is, we're not going to play anyone over 80% of the time. I think Chris Olave has the talent to do that, but it would still be an unknown, Ian. Now, Amari Cooper is a different story, but he went there last year and got buried. Obviously, Amari has since retired from the league, so maybe he was just washed. Like, I don't know for sure. But historically, like playing with Josh Allen, we would just be like slam dunk. But the Bills do give you just enough pause, and like you would have to learn the playbook, you would have to ramp up, and then like, is that enough? So honestly, like I really like Chris Olave right where he's at. But obviously the ceiling, if he was in a full-time role with Josh Allen, dude, like he wouldn't just be a top 6 wide receiver on bye weeks. Like he'd be, a top 12 wide receiver every single week.
My official prediction, Tim Patrick. Sorry, Bills fans. Over at tight end, Browns tight end David Njoku, limited once again with the knee issue. It does seem like he is returning, and that is going to be problematic for Harold Fannin Jr., but we'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. Dalton Kincaid continues to be limited with this oblique injury, guys. He was limited as well before the bye week when he wound up not playing, so would like to think he's going to be getting out there, but if you are relying on Dalton Kincaid this Sunday, I would at least have a backup plan ready. Similar sentiment here for Jets tight end Mason Taylor, who is not listed on the injury report on Wednesday. He was a DMP on Thursday with a quad injury. That said, Rap Sheet, bless his heart, has already come out and told us this is not a major injury, and he is not ruled out for Sunday. So again, we'll see what happens on Friday. Doesn't sound like it's going to be too big of an issue potentially, though. Otherwise, Bears tight end Cole Kmet not practicing again, setting up nicely for Colston Loveland. And finally, Dwayne, looking like no Jets cornerback Sauce Gardner for this Sunday. Even more good news for Jamar Chase and Tee Higgins. He has not practiced all week with a concussion. So with that, let's go ahead and get in these rankings. This has been our DraftKings opening lines. But first, a shout out to our friends at DraftKings Sportsbook. I have teamed up with DraftKings Sportsbook to bring you the ultimate way to tip off this NBA season. Right now, new customers who bet just $5 will get $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins, plus 3 months of NBA League Pass on us. That's right, new customers bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins, plus 3 months of NBA League Pass on us. All you have to do is download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and sign up using the promo code FANTASYLIFE. The crown is yours. Stack your bonus bets on same-game parlays, player props, money lines, spreads, and more, or stay in the action with live betting that brings every play to life. So here's your play. Download DraftKings Sportsbook, sign up with promo code FANTASYLIFE, bet just $5 and get 3 months of League Pass on us, and $300 if your bet wins, paid in bonus bets. Thanks to DraftKings Sportsbook for sponsoring this. Let's make this NBA season one to remember. Looking at our consensus fantasy life rankings at the RB position right now. As always, you can check out all of our rankings customized to your specific scoring settings on fantasylife.com. But now just assuming half PPR, Bijan Robinson leading things off, followed by Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey, Josh Jacobs, Devon Achane, and returning from bye, James Cook rounding out the top 6. Hasn't been a pretty season for Saquon Barkley, but maybe this revenge game against the Giants brings out the best of him. He is our RB7, followed by Derrick Henry, Javonte Williams, Rashad White, Cam Scatterbu, and Quinshon Judkins. As we get into our RB2 ranks, RBs 13 through 24, this is where it starts to get a little bit more problematic. But hey, again, beggars can't be choosers during Bomageddon. DeAndre Swift, RB13, followed by J.K. Dobbins, Breece Hall, Jaylen Warren, Jordan Mason, who I will say might be ticking down a little bit here given the Aaron Jones news. Also have Chase Brown, Alvin Kamara, Ramondre Stevenson, Kamani Vidal, Rico Dowdle, Bill Krosky Merritt, and Isaiah Pacheco. Dwayne, do you feel like it's a pretty clean cut almost after Judkins in terms of the guys where we truly feel good about, or would you lump Swift and Dobbins into that group given that they actually have pretty great matchups this week?
No, I think it's the first 12, but I think the next 2 guys you mentioned, like we know that they have roles. They are sharing a little bit of their backfield, but the matchups definitely help. So I think, just like you mentioned on Bomageddon, the theme you guys are going to hear today is like, honestly, there's going to be a lot of scenarios where we're actually talking about players moving up in the ranks, even though they don't have a great matchup. It's because there's so many players on bye. And honestly, matchup is the least important thing. Like, I've actually researched it over the years, Ian, going back over the last 3 years of data, looking at game by game data and looking at Vegas totals, team totals, players' production coming into the game versus the defense that they're playing against and all those things. And still, by far, the number one thing you should care about is, has the player been good and do they have a role? Then you start to factor in the other things. So just remember that this is not a week to get cute. If you have a player that you think has a significant role, like, you just want to put them into your lineup, because we do get to a point pretty quickly, even in the top 24, where we start to run into questions around roles. So some of those roles for those players are not perfect, but we know that they do have a role, and that's really important on a week like this.
Speaking of pretty nice roles, Jaylen Warren had himself a great role in week 7, Dwayne. One that was actually quite a bit better than what we even saw in his first game after the bye. That said, when you do look at even before the bye, before he had this knee injury, things were going up and down just a little bit. So again, we're working with the best we have. But on the other hand, Jaylen Warren, every time he touches the football this year, he's been making good things happen. Only Bijan Robinson and Amarian Hampton actually have a higher rate of missed tackles for us as a ball carrier. So again, Dwayne, not set in stone, but as things stand right now, Jaylen Warren is someone who is rising up the ranks for us.
Yeah, and I do want to caveat this. Look, anytime you want to make a stand on something that is associated with Arthur Smith, like, you're in the danger zone, Ian, because Arthur Smith historically has done things like this, and he will flip trends on their head. So I want to put that caveat out there. Having said that, before we had the practice injury in week 4, you and I were talking about, oh my gosh, it really looks like Jaylen Warren is taking over the Steelers' backfield. We had 2 really solid games where he handled 70 and 81% of the rushing attempts, snap attempt shares of 58 and 78%. Then he had that injury in week 4, didn't play, comes back in week 6 in more of a limited role. We actually saw some Caleb Johnson that game as the third guy rotating in. And then last week, it flipped back to what we really saw in weeks 2 and 3 for the Steelers, which was Jaylen Warren in a massive role. He had 67% of the snaps, and he had actually 84% of the rushing attempts last week. So I went back and looked at it, Ian, and I just averaged, like, okay, in the 3 games where he had that full-time role, if that's actually what he has, and that is their intention, that's the Steelers' intentions, he would have a utilization score of 84, and his historical comps would have averaged 16.4 fantasy points, which is, that's a running back 1, y'all. I mean, and that's essentially what he's averaged across those games. So 16.8 for him, so slightly above. It's funny how the utilization score is pretty close on that, Ian. I wonder why, but not a great matchup. Playing the Packers, man, like, they have held opposing running back rooms to -9 points versus their season average. So that's a negative DVP boost. You guys can check out the DVP tool over on fantasylife.com, and you can see what all these matchups look like. And what it does, it adjusts for the teams that the defense has already played against. And then it says, okay, what have they given up over or under what those teams average? And it looks at a bunch of different stats for you. So not a good matchup, but on a week like this, I think we have to lean into the fact that we have seen 3 games where Jaylen Warren has been the lead guy. I will also, one last caveat. Last week was like a crazy shootout where they were trailing and had to come back. And so that could also be a Jaylen Warren game script. At the same time, I don't think there's a way to keep him out of the top 24 this week. I have him as a mid-range running back 2. His Xfinity best ceiling in PPR is 23.7. His median projection is 15. So a player that we're going to have in lineups.
I'm with you, though, in terms of I almost do hope we can get more negative game script to see what he can do as a receiver. I mean, this entire Steelers running game before last week when they faced the Bengals without Trey Hendrickson, like, they haven't been able to get much going on the ground. Honestly, like, I think they were the 3rd worst team, only ahead of, like, the Browns and the Raiders in terms of RB rush yards before contact. But the thing Jaylen Warren has done that he's done great throughout his entire career is his work as a pass catcher, guys. 2.67 yards per out run. That is a ridiculous amount for, honestly, anyone, particularly a running back. I mean, we got Bijan and CMC as the next closest guys, and they really aren't even that close. So if Jaylen Warren does get the chance to hopefully be fully unleashed in the passing game, that is where this matchup actually could turn out more positive, because this season, the Packers, yes, they have been great against RBs as a whole. They have allowed the 2nd most receptions per game, though, to the position, potentially playing right into Jaylen Warren's hands. So as Dwayne started off with, danger zone, welcome to it, as long as we are, dealing with Arthur Smith. So could see Kenneth Gainwell in those situations instead. But yes, my RB17, Dwayne's RB RB16. Tough to keep Jaylen Warren out of lineups this week. Dwayne, we are not going to be going through fallers this week like we usually do on the show because, let's face it, we'll be talking about a bunch of backup running backs who, of course, have no place in the lineup. Again, pickings are slim. So just wanted to highlight a handful of other running backs, starting off with Bears RB DeAndre Swift going into Baltimore here. Very good matchup. They could be a little bit healthier coming out of the bye, but still, man, just based on what we've seen over these last 2 weeks, wheels up for DeAndre Swift.
Yeah, the Ravens have given up the number 5 fantasy boost to opposing running backs at 3.3 points per game. So like you mentioned, that's positive. And typically we only focus on the outliers here, guys. You won't hear us talk about, oh, they face this defense that's in the middle, because it doesn't matter. We're really looking for more of the edge cases, like the top 5 or 6 defenses, depending on what they look like, where we care about it being a good or a bad matchup. You can apply that to all the positions. But you mentioned earlier, we do have the Bears as 6.5-point dogs. And so we know that Swift is another player that's been active in recent weeks in the passing game. Obviously, some of his big plays have come in the passing game. He scored that long touchdown in a primetime game a couple of weeks back. So looking at this, the interesting part here is, as 6.5-point dogs, Ian, we have seen the Bears, since their bye week over the last 2 games, really lean into being a more run-heavy team, a minus 9% drop back rate over expected. So I'm kind of curious to see what happens if the Bears actually do fall behind in this game, and do they stick to their guns on that? Is that a real change that they're wanting to implement? Or is it something that, well, it's like, okay, well, now we know we're playing a really, really good offense, and we may have to keep the pedal to the metal from the get-go. But the bottom line is on Swift, like, look, if they get in a game script where they can stick with the run, like, he's getting his carries on the ground. He gets about half of them. And if they fall behind, he is the preferred option in the passing game. So I think that adds security to DeAndre Swift. We'll talk about Kyle Monungai here in a bit. But yeah, Swift's a low-end running back 1 this week, man. 24.4 Xfinity best projection right now.
We do have him consensually ahead of guys like Breece Hall, Jaylen Warren, and Chase Brown, among others. Pretty neck and neck, although we do both have him ahead of J.K. Dobbins as well. But man, how can you not love this matchup, Dwayne? Yeah. Cowboys, 2nd-ranked scoring offense in the league, 30th-ranked scoring defense. That's what fantasy football hopes and dreams are made of right there.
Yeah, Swift projects ahead, even though the game script's not ideal, because like he is more game script, like he's insulated from bad game scripts because he plays the passing down work. Dobbins, on the other hand, if somehow the Cowboys jumped out to have a lead, he does get eliminated in the passing game. Having said that, yeah, this is the ultimate matchup. The Cowboys have sanctioned the number 3 fantasy boost. And remember, guys, we just talked about the Ravens, and they were number 5. There's a big difference here. The Ravens were sitting at 3.3 as their boost to running back rooms. The Cowboys, 6.5 points per contest. Now, they have been knocked out of number 1. They were leading in all categories for like 3 weeks, which was pretty hilarious because it was basically any column you read about rankings risers, just like start with who's playing the Cowboys. That's still the case. It's a really problematic for them. But when you look at the betting model, which is really, Friedman's model over at Fantasy Life, and guys, we have a Talk Data to Me episode tomorrow coming out where Friedman walks you through all the ins and outs of how betting works, how you find angles. So be sure to check that out. But man, in his model, you're not going to like this, Ian. He actually has the Cowboys as 6.5-point dogs, and it's due to a bunch of cool factors he talks about on the show. I didn't like it, though. I'm like, come on, man. We're supposed to be Cowboys fans. But if his model thinks that, which is what I use for the projection model, that's good for J.K. Dobbins. Because that means he has the great matchup, probably in a game where, at some point they're leading or they're at least close and they can continue to lean into him. So while it's a thinner needle to thread because he's not involved in the pass game, man, the upside is massive here. And I will say this. I know he's dudded for you guys in the last 2 games, but don't let it influence you. I know 4 and 9 fantasy points in the last 2 contests. His role hasn't changed, Ian. Like, he's just as involved in ever. If you look over the last 2 games, he has handled 64 and 70% of the rushing attempts. Actually, you could argue it's better than what he was doing early in the season. Just didn't score the touchdowns, but he's had 71% of the carries inside the 5-yard line. That's one of the best marks in the NFL. So he's going to get his chances to score some touchdowns this week.
Again, not much pass game involvement for Dobbins, but certainly set up to smash on the ground. We hope we could get more pass game involvement for our next running back, Alvin Kamara. Obviously, no Kendre Miller moving forward. We know Taysom Hill is going to be a nuisance on the goal line, but can we just please get some more targets, especially against Vita Vea and company, Dwayne? I mentioned the Packers are number 2 in receptions allowed to RBs per game. The Buccaneers are number 1. We could be looking back on Sunday saying, oh, yeah, Doug Kamara against the Buccaneers, but it just hasn't been that easy this year for him in the passing game.
Yeah, and the utilization score, we talked about it on the utilization show, so I won't go too deep, but the TLDR version of it is 94% of Alvin Kamara's comps, which takes into account that he hasn't been very productive on his touches this year. They've been top 24 running backs, guys. So, like on a slate like this, like we have to start him. Ian mentioned it. The Bucks can be very stingy at times, especially against running backs not named Jahmyr Gibbs, who can just kind of make anybody look bad in a flash. But Kamara has not been that kind of player. So it will be interesting to see if they do involve him more in the pass game, Ian. The small trend that we have seen here is in the games where they're loading him up on the ground early in the year before Kendre Miller became a thing, they weren't throwing in the ball. And those passes were going to Juwan Johnson. Last week, Kendre Miller goes down. What do? They start feeding Juwan Johnson again. And Alvin Kamara goes back to just handling the groundwork and his target share goes down. But to your point, especially in a game like this, I think we can see that change. I middled it in the projection model. So he's been around a 10 or 11% in the games without where Kendre hasn't been a big factor this year. And then he's been closer to 20 in the games where he was splitting more of the workload with Kendre Miller. But I put it right at 15% this week because I do think it will necessitate, if they want to use Kamara and get him involved in the game plan, it's probably better to throw him the ball than just try to pound the ball in the middle. He has an Xfinity best ceiling of 21.8. He's a mid-range running back too, despite the kind of tough matchup on the ground and the fact that he hasn't been that great. But again, 6 buys, that moves some people up.
Finally, right next to Kamara, we do have Chase Brown. A few spots after that, Ramondre Stevenson, despite the tough matchup against the Cleveland Browns, and Myles Garrett. And then finally, Woody Marks sitting there as more of a borderline RB2. Any final thoughts on these guys, Dwayne?
No, I mean, that summarizes it. I will just say on Woody Marks, really cool. 2 things. Kamani Vidal, last week, guys, he didn't come through in the box score, but we don't have Hassan Haskins this week. And he already had the role last week. And so now we're going to have Naheem Miller-Hines. He's going to be a backup. We don't know if Trevion Williams or who's going to be the RB3, but essentially I would expect a pretty good big role here for Kamani Vidal in this game. Not a great matchup against the Vikings, but again, going to get his playing time and an offense that we like. So he's going to be in most starting lineups this week. Woody Marks over the last 3 games, Ian, I'll just say that, like, I know everybody got super excited about Woody Marks, and then it didn't happen. And now it's like, it's funny how people will flip on these players so quickly. But also, like, he's been in a better role. He's at 50% of the snap shares, 39% of the rushing attempts, and an 8% target share. That may not sound massive, but again, guys, this is going to be a game script where he could be more involved. We're probably not going to have Christian Kirk or Nico Collins. You've got a bunch of rookie wide receivers. Guess who it's easy to get the ball to? Dalton Schultz and Woody Marks underneath. We saw him catch the touchdown last week. I know it was a little bit difficult. He dropped another one, but I think he's going to be involved in the passing game. And again, the little trend that we've seen over the last 3 weeks is more of a lean by the Texans to Woody Marks instead of Nick Chubb. So yeah, borderline running back too.
Dwayne, real quick on the spot, before we get to your Sicko start, we actually had Johnny ask, who would you start in your flex? Jordan Mason, Rico Dowdle, or a Devonta Smith? I lean towards Devonta Smith right there, honestly, even if A.J. Brown is going to play.
Agree. Yep. I think Devonta Smith offers you the most upside there.
And then you did mention Kamani Vidal playing on Thursday night, but we did hear Kamani Vidal versus Jordan Mason. I do think with Aaron Jones back, yeah, go ahead and give me Kamani Vidal.
Yeah, that one's close, but I can go Vidal as well. That one honestly is like dealer's choice. Yeah, I'm fine with Vidal. Like, we just know what his role is going to be. We don't know for sure with Jordan Mason. We know what happened early in the year, but I mean, theoretically, Aaron Jones could also just like be super healthy right now. I mean, he was on IR for 4 weeks. It's not like he's trying to come back, and he's been limited with the hamstring. He's supposedly fully practicing and everything's good now. So yeah, I'm with you. Kamani Vidal.
And with that, guys, let's get to the Sicko start of the week. Again, Dwayne has a strict set of rules. What is it, man? 30% under starting? You can explain it. But anyway, explain the rules and then who your Sicko start of the week is.
Well, the main thing is they have to be rostered in less of 50% of leagues. And I mostly use Yahoo to go get the list. And so with running back, it gets really tough quickly, guys, because if you go over to Yahoo or whatever platform you're playing on, and you guys know when you go to check your waiver wire, running backs are never there. So immediately that shrinks things down. But the name I'm going to go with here is Kyle Monangai from the Bears. And again, guys, this is a long shot. He's only rostered in 30% of leagues. He's only in 9% of starting lineups. I am not telling you to shove Kyle Monangai into lineups. But what I am saying is this. he's got some momentum right now. Like his role has been growing over the last couple of games. The Bears are running the ball more, like we talked about. We've got a nice matchup here against the Ravens on the ground. If the Bears can keep this game close, or heck, even have a lead, he is a guy that can have 10 to 12 opportunities. We saw it last week. He had 13 rushing attempts and 2 targets in that game. So the potential for some volume is definitely here. Obviously, if the Bears fall behind Ian and like they're down by 10, Monungai is going to be a complete dud. But the other factor that I try to look at on the Sicko calls, and it gave us a Rondé Gadsden last week, is the fact that if something does break well for this player in this game, it's someone that's probably really going to move up waiver wires. And Monungai is one of these last guys, Ian, that's sitting out there that's really looking more like the clear-cut RB2 behind an RB1 like DeAndre Swift. So most of the other names like Blake Corum and all those guys, they're gone. Like they're rostered at this point. So Kyle Monungai is a guy that has really risen in my rankings as far as looking like more of a clear-cut running back too. So that's the other plus. And knock on wood, we don't want injuries, but if something happened to Swift, obviously that would definitely catapult him. But I just want to say there's a lot of teams where if the starting running back went down, we'd be like, we're not sure. We probably think it's going to split. Right now, I think that most of the work would go to Kyle Monungai.
I am with you. And again, that is a reason why, as much as Tyler Algier, getting to play the Dolphins and everything, has that handcuff, plus maybe he could just make the most out of his opportunities this week role. I don't think that's too different from Kyle Monungai or my hearted seater guys, Isaiah Davis, Jets RB2. I do think he has potential to sneak into the back half of, the RB2 just pipeline this week. But more than anything, it's just a guy I want on my roster. You guys remember for the last month, probably, when we kept screaming about Kendre Miller and the potential for him to, one, maybe provide some flex value in a pinch, two, to be, this injury contingent handcuff for Alvin Kamara, and three, if there was going to be a trade, all of a sudden he would step in that starting role. This is now exactly what we're looking at again with Isaiah Davis. So no, I don't love the Jets offense. I don't think we'd be slotting in Isaiah Davis as his top 12 back, but man, you guys see the names we've been talking about. You see what it's like when we have these bye weeks and you're trying to find that second or third flex. Isaiah Davis would certainly be someone that we could actually look at for 15 to 20 touches per week, and that in and of itself is going to be enough to make the top 24 more weeks than not in fantasy land. So again, this matchup in and of itself isn't exactly terrifying. In fact, it's pretty freaking great against the Bengals' league worst defense in PPR points per game allowed to position. You hate the Jets offense. I hate the Jets offense. But hey, guys, 6'1", 220 pounds, the dude can catch passes. Braylon Allen is not expected back until December at the earliest. So Isaiah Davis, Kyle Monungai, those are two players who, to Dwayne's point, actually are still out there on a lot of waiver wires. You could do a lot worse than spot starting them this week, and otherwise just keeping them on that bench. So good stuff there on the running backs, Dwayne. Let's get into the wide receivers, but first, a quick word to our friends over at Xfinity. If you call yourself a sports fan, you got to have Xfinity, guys. All the games all in one place so you can become the best at watching sports. Seriously, we got the Sports Zone, which features every pro football game and over 1,000 college games, highlights, and alerts all in one place. There's also the multi-view option. Maybe you don't have 4 televisions in your living room. Well, guess what? With multi-view, you don't need them. You can be up in the 4 stadiums all at once. There's also the Xfinity Fan View, live scores, odds, and stats all in one place, personalized to you. And guess what? You're going to catch all of this in enhanced 4K, simply stunning viewing experience from Xfinity. You can use your voice remote and just say football to find it all. Imagine all your football all in one place. Easy. Learn more at Xfinity.com. Do note restrictions apply. New residential customers only. Taxes and fees are extra and subject to change. Let's break down some wide receivers, everyone. We got our consensus wide receiver one group on your screen right now, but of course, I will be reading through them to help out our loyal audio listeners. We got Jamar Chase back and sitting there as the wide receiver one in fantasy, followed by CeeDee Lamb, Rashee Rice, how quickly things get back there, Justin Jefferson, Drake London, and Emeka Egbuka without Mike Evans or Chris Godwin rounding out the top 6, followed by Courtland Sutton in that spicy matchup against the Cowboys, sitting as the wide receiver 7. Roman Dunze, a few duds in a row, yes, but he's also getting a nice matchup against the Ravens. I would not expect him to stay too quiet for too much longer. A.J. Brown pending that hamstring injury, but to Dwayne's point, God forbid A.J. Brown does miss it, we would be probably just crossing out Brown and putting Devontae Smith in that spot, if not even higher. Zay Flowers, Chris Olave, and George Pickens rounding out the top 12. I know some have been concerned about Pickens potentially seeing some of Patrick Surtain. We'll just say, guys, he got the better of PS2, at least on a few occasions last year in that Steelers-Jets matchup. Steelers Broncos matchup, again, wasn't a big box score, but it was one of those games I was highlighting in my Sheesh report. In the wide receiver 2 range, we got DK Metcalf, wide receiver 13, followed by Tee Higgins, Jaylen Waddle, Quentin Johnston, Michael Pittman, and Devontae Smith himself, followed by in the back half of the wide receiver 2 tier, Tedero McMillan, Jordan Addison, Wan'Dale Robinson, Stephon Diggs, Lab McConkey, and Keenan Allen. 3 Chargers, Dwayne, within 8 spots of each other. I would like to think Justin Herbert can get it going for all of them, but in reality, there could be an odd man out here. We'll see what happens on Thursday night. And everyone on listen to us on Friday will probably already know which one is the odd man out. But wanted to ask you real quick, Dwayne, about Wan'Dale Robinson, someone who maybe I would say, just is the most surprising person to now be in the wide receiver 2 tier relative to preseason expectations.
Yeah, but I mean, he's balling out, and he did it against the Broncos last week. We've seen a couple of really big games from him. He's getting more vertical with Jaxson Dart. He did that earlier in the year with Russell Wilson against our Cowboys, Ian, for a big touchdown. So it's just really exciting to see. Like, Wando's still doing most of his work in a similar role to what we've seen in the past. A lot of short and intermediate touches. But I think the big thing here that's nice for him is getting those looks down the field. Like, we've always seen him earn the targets, but I think last year you went back and watched the film, and you were just like, "Come on, man! Like, this is like a complete." It was a PPR scam. Like, I know we've talked about some PPR scams that were not real, and now it's looking like that is not real for Wan'Dale Robinson either. And so I think that is the big difference we're getting here. And I do think that there's a gravitational pull that Jaxson Dart has due to his legs, Ian, all the RPO stuff they're doing, the play action stuff. Really nice job by Brian Daboll and the coaching staff. And when you have to worry about all that window dressing, Wan'Dale does have the speed to get behind that linebacker and in between the safety. Also has come down with some really clutch catches in that area and has the speed to get over the top and hit the big play as well. So I don't quite have him in my top 24. I think I have him as wide receiver 25 or 26. But man, like all of them, there's a lot of really close calls in there. So yeah, if you have Wan'Dale Robinson, especially if you're playing in a league that has 12 teams and you're starting 3 wide receivers, like he's in all of those lineups. And he's borderline if you're in a 12-teamer where you've got 2 starting wide receivers and you don't have a flex.
It's a great point on the gravitational pull because we see it in every single Chiefs game, man. Patrick Mahomes is running around, and you just can't expect NFL defenders to cover these wide receivers for 8 to 9 seconds at a time as it happens. So, again, no, Jaxson Dart is not Patrick Mahomes, guys, but he is pretty freaking fast. He's able to move in the pocket, and accordingly, you get instances like Daniel Bellinger having a wide-open 40-yard touchdown, even in the last Eagles game when Wan'Dale scored that touchdown. That was on a bit of a broken play as well. Things that happen when you have a mobile quarterback with a big arm like Jaxson Dart. One quarterback, Dwayne, who is not mobile, but he does have a big arm, and we appreciate his service. Joe Flacco now helping out the Bengals and really helping out Jamar Chase, and yes, Tee Higgins as well. Let's face it, even when we had Jake Browning, even if we didn't like the fact about it, Jamar Chase was still sitting there as a wide receiver 1. We were starting him each and every week regardless. Tee Higgins, though, Dwayne, we're last week or 2 weeks ago, we were talking about him more so as his boomer bust wide receiver 3. Now he is your wide receiver 13. He's my wide receiver 15. It sounds like no Sauce Gardner against the Jets. We're back, baby. Let's go, T.
Yeah, man. I think that like you've summed this up the best on social media, and it's just thank you. Thank you, Joe Flacco. Like, we all owe you. But if you look at Flacco, Ian, like what we've seen these last couple of games, with the Bengals, really just looks a lot more like what we've seen from him over the last 3 years, excluding those first 4 games with the Browns, where things just didn't work out. And the Browns have some nice young players. So I don't know if it was a scheme thing that Joe just wasn't comfortable, but he's definitely comfortable right now, getting to play more in shotgun, surveying the field. They're a team that lets the play clock milk down sometimes. He gets his read right. And then, he has Tee Higgins and Jamar Chase, and he's a veteran quarterback. He understands all the concepts defenses are using. Guys, when Joe Flacco came into the league, too high was popular back then. He played against it a lot. And we see this with some of these veterans that are leading the league right now. If they've got 2 good weapons and they came into the league at a time where they already learned how to get through progressions against those kind of defenses, we've seen that multiple times. And Flacco, I think that's part of why he's thriving over these last few years. He's like, oh man, like when I came into the league, I was roasting. I had to play against this kind of coverage then. And so when you look at it for Higgins, 16.4 fantasy points per game in these 2 games with Flacco at the helm. On one hand, you say, oh, that's a really small sample. On the other hand, you're like, well, it's Tee Higgins. Like, we've seen him do this before. So while Flacco could come back down, I don't think we necessarily expect him to throw for, 280 yards every single game. Like 250 is always on the table in this offense. It's a pass-heavy offense. Cincinnati has a drop-back rate over expected of 5 percentage points over the last 2 games with Flacco. That's number 1 in the NFL. And again, it's a coaching staff that's shown us when they've got a quarterback they trust under center, they're just going to throw the ball. And it makes sense when you've got the receivers they have. So yeah, looking at Tee Higgins this week, it is a situation where he is inside. He's my wide receiver 13. I think I'm the highest. I think you're right behind me, Ian, maybe by a couple of spots. But man, he's a borderline wide receiver 1 this weekend. I think there's a little bit of risk here against the Jets of like, if they're just blowing them out, maybe they run it a little bit more. But again, like they've remained so pass heavy, even in these games where they've been winning in the past. I feel pretty insulated from that. So Xfinity best ceiling of 21.3 fantasy points. He has a median projection of 14.1. That's in PPR in my projection model, guys. If you look on the site, you can see aggregate, you can see me, or you can see Friedman. Right now, I'm just sorting it based on mine. So yeah, high-end wide receiver 2, man, against the Jets, and not having Sauce Gardner, that's just an added benefit.
And let's face it, he had a great game last week. It would have been even better if he actually prioritized his fantasy managers and not his actual real life team. If he scored that touchdown at the end of the game, instead of again sliding down and go ahead and just letting the Bengals go win. All Drake and joshing around his side. Dwayne Flacco understands the assignment. Okay, 2 weeks. Jamar Chase has an absurd 35 targets, and hey, it's Jamar Chase. I mean, they actually asked Tee Higgins like about Jamar getting so many targets, and T was kind of shrugging his shoulders and was like, "Hey, if he keeps doing what he's doing, man, like keep feeding the man." But again, Jamar Chase with 35. Tee Higgins still with 18 in the 2-game stretch, guys. And then no other Bengal has more than 8. So again, almost this entire passing game is being funneled through its top 2 dogs. We should feel pretty great about both of them in fantasy land. Again, even independent of if Sauce Gardner was playing, Dwayne, I'd still be starting T and Chase with confidence. That's just a cherry on top, again, of a really nice spot. So let's get into some other names here that we want to highlight. And we're going to start off with those Saints wide receivers, Dwayne. Again, mentioned them a little bit at the top of the show as trade candidates, but at least for this Sunday, we are still expecting them to be fighting for the New Orleans Saints. And they got a pretty nice matchup here against the pass funnel Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah, for sure. And with Olave, like the TLDR guys, we've already talked about him on the utilization report this week. I've written about him in both of these things, but man, he's the number 7 utilization score on the season at an 83. 77% of his comparisons in the utilization score history, which goes back to 2020, have been a wide receiver 1 to wide receiver 12 on the season. So Olave was already moving up our ranks. Well, now you get the bye weeks, so it's natural, like he's going to fit into the top. But I think the name we have to like kind of make sure people have on the radar this week, Ian, is Shaheed. And while he's not in that same rare era that we've seen with Olave, we've had some near misses on some big plays. His target share is definitely lower, but it's still solid. It's at 20%. And this is a player that we know can get loose for the big play at any moment. He's also a guy that can take a shorter pass to the house. And so even though his opportunities haven't been as good, man, he's made decent on them. 11.2 fantasy points per game. You've also mentioned the fact that he's had a better floor than what we've seen sometimes in the past. So got a nice solid floor here. You've got the funnel defense, and then you also have that boom potential for the big play with Shaheed. So Shaheed, what's funny is, man, their Xfinity best, which is the ceiling projection model, is not that far apart. Olave is sitting at a 21.9. He's more separated in his median score, but man, the ceiling for Shaheed is not far behind Ian at 18.6 PPR points. So really close in their ceiling. It's actually what the model's saying is that like the ceiling case could kind of go either way. Like one of those guys probably is going to have a ceiling game this weekend. Maybe we get lucky and it's both of them, with against the Tampa defense. But I like both of these players. So Olave, we already mentioned, top 12, top 6 guy. Shaheed is a high-end wide receiver 3 this weekend.
You mentioned the floor zone, man. This is a new development for both of these guys. Olave this year has not finished worse than the PPR wide receiver 36, and Shaheed hasn't finished worse than the wide receiver 46. So, no, you're not thrilled when he finishes as the wide receiver 40, but this used to be a true boom or bust, as in a 0-0-0 receiving line sort of player. This season, guys, Rashid Shaheed, he has at least 4 catches in every single game. The only other people that can say that have played all 7 games, Keenan Allen, Trey McBride, Christian McCaffrey, Jackson Smith-Njigba, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Not bad company there for Rashid Shaheed. Let's talk about Rome Odunze, Dwayne, because I wanted to ask you on this one. I remember in our utilization report show, you were saying a little bit of a downgrade. Is it just the matchup against the Ravens that is causing you to, still be pretty high on Mr. Rome?
Yeah, it's the matchup and the fact that we have 6 teams on bye. We talked about him in the utilization report as being a mid-range wide receiver 2 the rest of the way, but this week he does sneak inside to the low-end wide receiver 1 territory due to those factors. So we already talked about the fact that, the Bears have been more run-heavy over the last 2 games, and that's honestly been a big factor. Rome Odunze's still been getting the targets, Ian, but the pie has been smaller. He's got 5.2 and 5.1 fantasy points due to that mostly. And so if we've got a game where they're 6.5-point dogs, like we could see them need to throw the ball more. I think that opens things up. We also have Marlon Humphrey, didn't practice on Wednesday. I haven't seen what's gone on with him on Thursday, but that's, the the Ravens have been banged up over the last several weeks. And so over the last 4 games, like they have boosted opposing passing attacks by 20 yards and a half a touchdown per game. So I do think that Caleb probably throws for, I would put Caleb's line at 1.5 in this game for passing touchdowns. I think I have him projected at 1.51 for the week, but I think Odunze has a really good chance of coming down with one of those. Got a nice ceiling here, 21.6 Xfinity best ceiling.
Humphrey was back to a full practice today, so should be out there. But also earlier this week announced his potential intentions, Dwayne, to do a glizzy taste tour around the country one day, 50 states and 50 glizzies. Shout out to Humphrey and all of his always entertaining endeavors over on the old Twitter sphere. Zay Flowers, Dwayne, going up against the Chicago Bears, a defense that, let's face it, I would say has exceeded expectations. They lead the NFL in takeaways, but also one of just 5 defenses to allow double-digit receiving touchdowns to wide receivers already, which would be pretty nice if Zay Flowers could get in on that because he's largely been playing great this year. He just hasn't found the end zone since week 1.
Yeah, and it's funny because every week when I work through the rest of season projections, which you can all find it over at fantasylife.com. You just go to the normal projections page, and on the drop down for time period, you change it to 2025 season, and you'll see what the players, and then you can toggle between points per game as well as like their total points for the rest of the way. Accounts for injuries, games we think are going to miss, teammate injuries that may spike their target shares for 3 or 4 games or their workload. So Kamani Vidal, for example, that's all baked in with Omari and Hampton eventually coming back. But Flowers is always popping in that. And like Ian, honestly, like he'll be up there like wide receiver 14. I'm like, okay, like I really like Zay Flowers, but I got to go back and look at him. But it's a testament to him and the targets that he's earning. Like, I mean, he is leading the Ravens in target share at 30%, but he's got a 72 utilization score, which tells you his role is not the greatest, even though he's getting the targets. And you and I have talked about this many times. I think you and I are both believers that if the Ravens actually just unleash Zay Flowers to play a full route tree, he can do it. We've seen him cook guys intermediate. We've seen him cook guys deep. But for whatever reason, they'll have these games, and they will in some games, they'll let him cook, man. They'll be like, all right, we're going to let him do that this game. We never know when it's going to happen, though. So they do hamper him a lot by keeping him chained to the line of scrimmage more often. But, man, when you're playing on a team with a 30% target share, and then you look at the team total for the Ravens this weekend, again, all contingent on Lamar Jackson playing, guys, but it's the number 3 total on the slate at 28.5 points. So you have a player getting a big target share. I get it. They haven't scored a lot of touchdowns so far. We're not going crazy with their touchdown projection, but man, like it's going to be real easy for him to come up with one, and it could be one of these smash spots. So yeah, I've got Flowers as a low end wide receiver 1 this week. You saw we all had him, I believe, in our top 12 consensus when you put it up earlier. 22.9 fantasy points for his Xfinity best ceiling. That's the number 7 mark for a ceiling this week for wide receivers in PPR.
Few guys who maybe aren't the auto starts as someone like Zay Flowers probably is for you guys. Romeo Doubs, who I will just go ahead and say a few nice things about because Dwayne has been so nice and actually gone out of his way to already do so. So I will not make him do anymore. But guys, Doubs comes in as our wide receiver 26 consensusly between Dwayne and myself. As 1 spot behind Xavier Worthy, but we would be starting Romeo Doubs ahead of Terry McLaurin, Rashid Shaheed, Khalil Shakur, DJ Moore, and the 49ers wide receivers, as well as that kind of low wide receiver 3 boomer bust group like Kayshon Boutte, Alec Pierce, and Keon Coleman. Dwayne, I think the other names that, again, a lot of people have probably picked up this week and spent fab on, Tez Johnson, obviously taking more of a full-time role with Mike Evans out, and also these Texans wide receivers in Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel. How are you feeling about this group?
Yeah, Tez Johnson, he was last week's Sicko start. He's a borderline wide receiver 3 with wide receiver 2 upside this week against the Saints. Alec Iomanner, I was out on him last week because, well, number 1, we didn't have 6 teams on bye, so it didn't force him up the ranks, and it was just a tough matchup. And so anytime you've got a shaky talent and a tough matchup and a full slate, I tend to lean away from it and fade it. But this week, you've got a scenario where the Titans are actually going to play against the Colts, and while they've been lights out on offense, Ian, they give up the number 2 fantasy boost to opposing wide receivers at 7.0 points per game. I'll go ahead and throw out Chimere DK as well, Ian. I think it's actually Chimere DK, if I'm saying it correctly there. But man, his role has grown too. I get it. You guys are like, this is sick, Dwayne. Well, some of you play in sick leagues, okay? And I got a different name for the Sicko start. So these guys were candidates, but I didn't use them. But DK, man, he's taken over that slot role from Tyler Lockett, made a few big plays last week. And Cam Ward, guys, don't look now. I'm not saying he's great. I know the underlying data points aren't awesome, but he's thrown for 265, 222, and 255 yards in the last 3 games. And he gets another nice matchup here. So while the touchdowns haven't come, the yards have been getting better for Cam damn Ward. And then the Texans rookies, man, those Iowa State boys, Ian, Jaylen Noel, Jaden Higgins. You did a nice job picking up Jaylen Noel for us. You had him at the top of some of our bids last night. Just know this, guys. Here's the basic thing you need to know. If Nico Collins is out, which neither of these guys practiced today, and Christian Kirk or Nico Collins, if Nico Collins is out, Jaden Higgins is his replacement. He plays mostly in the 2 wide receiver stuff, doesn't play as much in the 3 wide, but if Nico's out, he's going to probably play in all the sets. Xavier Hutchinson's out there all the time. He just doesn't earn targets. Yeah. And then if you look at Jaylen Noel, he replaces Christian Kirk, and he moves into the slot. And if they're in a game script where they're wanting to use more 11, he can have a game where he's out there a lot more. So they're both low-end wide receiver 4s. I think it'll be tough for both of them to boom, Ian. Man, the Texans offense, I got to say, when I watch it, I'm like, everything looks so dadgum difficult, man. It's just like, I'm like, come on, guys. And I don't think it's all a CJ Stroud thing. I think Stroud's still a baller, but like, offensive line issues, guys, are a big problem there. But these guys are borderline, like I said, low-end wide receiver 4s. And one of them's probably going to boom if we have both of those guys out. When I say boom, probably going to give you like 15 PPR points.
Speaking of booms, Do Dirty hanging out with us in the chat. He was wondering about Alec Pierce versus Romeo Doubs. Needs a high ceiling guy. I would go ahead and just say Romeo Doubs, as much as we do think Pierce has some boom potential. More on that shortly. Again, we do have Doubs several spots ahead. And also from Iva's son, Darnell Mooney or Alec Pierce. That probably is the one where we're going more so with Alec Pierce. Dwayne, do you concur?
Yeah, and I'll say real quickly on Alec Pierce, just, we've given Romeo Doubs his, flowers or his roses. Alec Pierce this year, man, like he's on pace for a career high 18% target share. And while that's not amazing, that's typically like historically a wide receiver 4. Here's the big thing, man. 64 and a half catchable air yards per game, Ian. That ranks 9th in the NFL. So he and Daniel Jones are just on an absolute heater. Guys, catchable targets deep down the field can be a very volatile stat. It can go away in a heartbeat, which is why I am with Ian. I would lean to Romeo Doubs. I think he's got a steadier diet of all these different things. But I will say, the Colts, man, the best team total on the slate, which seems like an every week occurrence now, 30.8 points. Alec Pierce, man, for a long touchdown, like sign me up this week.
Sign me up as well. I will say, I'm not sure if it'd be enough for me to boost him ahead of Pierce, but if we do get Kirk Cousins instead of Michael Penix, the one guy that might actually be an upgrade for is Darnell Mooney. We saw last year. He actually was leading Drake London through like the first 14 weeks of the year because him and Kirk Cousins were just in lockstep with some of their more timing-based routes. So Mooney, he is one of those guys where when you do pop on the all-22, like you still see this guy's moving very, very well out there. Crisp route runner. So again, not trying to, yeah, man. Seriously.
He's a lot like Jordan Addison.
Something to keep. Yes, he is. Something to keep in mind there. But come on, let's get to the Sicko Star. It's time to go hard or go home. Are you going to go hard in your leagues and start with these guys, or will you go home? This is Go Hard or Go Home, fueled by the bold flavors of Mike's Hard Lemonade, the official drink of those who go hard for their league. Dwayne, the Sicko Start for wide receiver. Who you got?
Yeah, we're going to go back to Troy Franklin here. Troy Franklin is rostered in 26% of Yahoo leagues. He's only in 13% of starting lineups. And his grip on the wide receiver 2 role in Denver has definitely loosened a little bit over the last couple of games, but he's still the clear number 2 behind Cortland Sutton as far as routes go. He's also the second on the team in target share, 19% for Franklin. Man, that's only 2 percentage points behind Sutton. So he's a key part of the offense. You get to play the Cowboys this week. He's still a second-year player that played his collegiate football with Bo Nix. And man, Ian, there have been a lot of big misses between these two players. Some of it has been on Nix missing Troy Franklin. Other times, Troy Franklin has just flat out dropped the ball. And it's been perfectly on his hands. There's been a couple that were like, okay, that would have been a really good catch, but it would have been a lot, like in your words, Ian, would have been a lot cooler if he caught it. But I mean, plays that if you run that play out 100 times, like it's probably 50-50. And in that particular scenario, like we've seen more of those go against Troy Franklin than for him. And just watching him, like hands positioning and things like that don't seem to be an issue. Some players, like you go and look at it like Jonathan Mingo and like his hands are like in opposite directions and stuff. And you're like, yeah, drops are probably just going to keep being a problem. I'm not seeing those things with Troy Franklin. I'm not the expert, a guy like Matt Harmon is, on watching guys receiver hands positions and stuff like that, but it looks pretty clean to me. I think the other nice thing you get here, Ian, is the Cowboys are going to probably push the Broncos. I know the Broncos are a good defense, but look, Patrick Surtain can't cover CeeDee Lamb, can't cover George Pickens and Jake Ferguson all at the same time. And we have Dak Prescott absolutely playing out of his freaking mind. Having said all that, guys, do remember Freeman's model actually likes the Broncos even more, but that's a scenario where the big plays are still going to be available there against the Cowboys. So again, I think this is a guy that checks a lot of the criteria. I know he hasn't quite broken out yet, but he has an Xfinity best ceiling of 15.5 PPR points, a median of 9.4. So borderline wide receiver 3 for Troy Franklin as the second best option in the passing game for the Broncos right now.
Bo Nix and Troy Franklin are 2 for 18, Dwayne, on passes traveling at least 30 yards.
They're the opposite of Alec Pierce and Daniel Jones.
Dude,
but again, that's
the only connection. The only college teammate connection I ever remember being this bad was Mason Rudolph and James Washington. And I do not think either Bo Nix or Troy Franklin are as bad as Mason Rudolph and James Washington were. Come on, guys. Again, they had the beautiful hookup, when they faced the Bills in the playoff game. Also had a cool off-script play. To Dwayne's point, it's not all been on Bo, not all been on Troy Franklin. The one thing that is helping Franklin out this year is he actually has 11 screen targets. That's actually the third most among wide receivers. So, yeah, we'd like to figure out the stuff downfield, but at least a decent floor, even if that doesn't work out. For the Hartitz heater, something we've already talked about a little bit, but yes, I do believe in him. Give me Alec Pierce catching that long touchdown that Dwayne was mentioning, going 6 catches for 130 yards against a Titans defense that will be without, let's face it, underperforming, but number one corner nonetheless, L'Jarius Sneed for at least the next 4 weeks. He did get put on IR today. So with Alec Pierce, it's a situation where, again, we've already seen him have plenty of success. And then when you do look at the Titans' performance, again, even with Sneed, they're actually only better, I should say, than the Cowboys in terms of EPA and yards per target on passes thrown downfield to wide receivers. Dwayne, when you're next to the Cowboys defense and anything in the passing game, man, that is not a good sign. And again, we are seeing the Titans right there. So loving it for Pierce. I don't really think the return of Josh Downs is going to change all that much for Pierce. Honestly, again, going into the season, it was more so just AD Mitchell that was the potential concern. But as you so eloquently put it on Sunday night, Dwayne, AD Mitchell is in a doghouse that is inside another doghouse at the moment. So Alec Pierce, someone who is, again, inside our top 36, certainly still has that boomer bust quality, but we are liking the chances for the former this weekend. And guys, that wraps up this week's Go Hard or Go Home, brought to you by Mike's Hard Lemonade, because playing it safe is how you end up watching the playoffs from the couch. Going through the Week 8 ranks here on the Fantasy Life Show. Again, here's the thing: start-sit questions you got. We will get to those at the end of our show here shortly. But for now, going through our quarterback rankings, Mr. Josh Allen back from bye and back atop the consensus ranks, followed by Patrick Mahomes having one heck of a year, and Lamar Jackson, assuming, of course, he does play through that hamstring injury. Jalen Hurts QB4, Drake May QB5. And despite that tough matchup in Mile High, Dak Prescott still coming in as our QB6. Back half of the QB1 tier, Baker Mayfield, Justin Herbert, Daniel Jones, Caleb Williams, Bo Nix, and yes, Mr. Jaxson Dart rounding out the top 12. And we're going to go ahead and start with Mr. Dart here, Dwayne, going up against an Eagles defense that last time they went off together did not have Jalen Carter. So yes, they will have him back in the picture, but they got some other injuries to worry about now too, man. Adoree Jackson, Azeez Ojulari, Jeremiah Trotter Jr., several potential, key contributors there could be out of this one. So look, maybe Jalen Carter wrecks the game. Maybe Jaxson Dart falls back to earth a little bit as a passer. Again, he really only has Wan'Dale Robinson out there. So anything he does as a passer is just honestly surprising me at this point. But the one trump card that he still has either way is rushing production that, honestly, man, as much as we're like, he's not Lamar Jackson on the ground, and he's not, okay? We all understand that. But when you run as much as Jaxson Dart, guess what? The fantasy points wound up looking like Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, I mean, he's averaging 44.5 rushing yards per game in his 4 starts, Ian, which ranks third behind Lamar Jackson over that span at 48 and Josh Allen at 46.7. So, I mean, while we keep talking about him not being in the company of those guys, really, he's pretty close. Now, he doesn't get the carries inside the 5. He's not the big frame body that Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts is, so we're not going to say that. He's probably due for some regression in the rushing touchdowns. He's averaging 0.75 per game right now, and typically to keep something like that up, Ian, you need to be getting the tush push, which is Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts. So he's going to give up some points there, but again, man, anytime you get to start your week with like 4.5 fantasy points right off the bat from rushing, that's the starting point. And then if you boom in the passing game, man, you get a real blow up performance. If you're just average in the passing game, you're still probably right there at a borderline QB1. And in a slate like this, definitely going to be the case with the other 6 teams on bye. And I think the other interesting thing here is we do have to give Jaxson Dart some credit here. I mean, he torched the Broncos defense for 283 yards and 3 touchdowns. It's one game, But when we put it in with the rest of his game, he's averaging 198 yards as a passer. And I would say the arrow is actually pointed up a little bit right now, despite playing without Malik Neighbors, man. Like, he's finding a way to spread this ball around. Yes, a lot of it goes to Wandell, but you mentioned it, finding Daniel Bellinger getting loosed on these schemed up plays. Theo Johnson doing his part as well. He's got a guy like Lil Jordan Humphrey, should get Darius Slayton back. So not that we love these pass catchers, but because of what he can do and how much the defense has to worry about him running around, man, it's just really nice. So the Eagles are obviously going to be looking for revenge in this one. Odds makers have them as a significant favorite here, 7-point dogs, second worst team total on the slate. But man, when you can run, it erases a lot of that. And I will say Friedman's model actually thinks that the Eagles should be even bigger favorites, guys. So if you're looking a bet to go make right now, he has them at a spread of 11. So if you're just looking for a bet, go bet the Eagles to cover this game against the Giants. But that doesn't change my opinion on Jaxson Dart just because of what you said. He's got the rushing trump card. And now we've seen a ceiling passing game. His Xfinity best ceiling is 24.6 fantasy points, guys, right there with almost any quarterback on the slate. The only guys you're going to find higher than him are going to be the other names we named, which were Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, some of the very big dual threat passers that we've seen do it for multiple years. So, yeah, he's in the top 12 quarterbacks this week.
And look, even if you want to understandably nitpick a few of those throws against the Broncos, a drop pick here or there, we had the tip touchdown to Theo Johnson and everything. Dwayne, if he had gone into Mile High and thrown for like 90 yards and 3 picks, I would have said, yeah, he's a rookie. 4 start going into Denver. Wan'Dale Robinson's the only guy you can trust. So again, yes, there was a little bit going on there, but also, yes, guys, how could you not be impressed with what Dart has managed to do through just 4 career professional starts, which again, just continues to be crazy to me. So again, already a better fantasy quarterback than even real life, even though that's certainly looking good too. The QB4 guys since taking over in fantasy points per game, only Patrick Mahomes, Dak Prescott, and Bo Nix have been higher. So feeling great about Bo Nix. That said, Dwayne, Bo Nix, Jaxson Dart. That said, not everyone's lucky enough to have a top 12 quarterback. Maybe you are in those streaming streets with a player on bye. So maybe recommend a revenge game special. Aaron Rodgers going up against the Packers on Sunday Night Football. Hey, I don't want to say Rodgers is back or anything like that, Dwayne, but just some of the movement and off-script stuff he was showing against the Bengals, man, it did look vintage-esque Rodgers. We saw the arm strength on the Hail Mary, and accordingly, man, he is both of our QB15s this week, despite, a fairly tough matchup.
Yeah, and I think Aaron Rodgers is due for some regression here, guys. But again, on a slate like this, you're playing against the Packers. You get the revenge game narrative. He's averaging 211 passing yards per game, which is 19th in the league, but 2.33 passing touchdowns. Like, it's going to be tough to keep those two things up. But if there is an offense, Ian, where it probably works, it's probably Arthur Smith's, where they run the ball so much. They use all these tight end sets. And then when they get down inside the 20, they're actually letting Aaron Rodgers throw the ball. Now, I will say they need to get inside the 20 more often. When you look at the discrepancy with how many touchdowns they're scoring per drive versus how often they're reaching the red zone, this is one of those teams that actually screams negative regression. But in a week like this, there's really nothing we can do about it, so we both have him inside the top 15. And it is a scenario, another one that Friedman really likes, has actually got the Steelers as 0.8 point favorites in his model versus what the odds makers are saying right now, which are the Packers as 3 points. As 3-point totals on Sunday Night Football, traveling to the Steelers. So yeah, Aaron Rodgers does move inside the top 15. The one other name I'll hit really quick, Ian, is Marcus Mariota. So it's a Monday night deal. Obviously, we've already got Jaden Daniels ruled out. It does seem like Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel are trending towards playing with them practicing today. So that's a good step forward. Here's the thing I'll say about Mariota, guys. Kind of goes back to the Jaxson Dart thing. I mean, he's averaged 31 rushing yards per game in the games over the last 3 years where he's played at least 80% of the snaps. So that just gets rid of the things where he came as a backup, gets hurt, stuff like that. So when you have that kind of rushing floor, and then you have a game where you're probably going to have to throw the ball against the Chiefs, like if you want to stay in this thing, like Marcus Mariota, I've got him as a mid-range QB2. But man, he is the kind of profile that could honestly pop off for like a QB8 finish, especially on a slate like this. So if you're absolutely just getting, punched in the face at quarterback, you're like, everybody's picked up everything, Mariota would be an option.
And those are guys where, no, they're not in our QB1 circle of trust. But again, a lot of you guys are streaming. So we have Jaxson Dart QB12. Jordan Love's right behind him. We got Aaron Rodgers inside our top 15. Marcus Mariota. Dwayne, the last quarterback that I truly would feel good about starting in that QB tier is your Sicko Star of the Week. So let's talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I nearly went with Mariota for the Sicko start, but I wanted to stay true. And the reason why I would have gone with Mariota is because he has the dual threat capability that I typically look for in this call. But if you guys remember, the other criteria here is picking up a player that could potentially have value the rest of the way. Maybe you flip them, you do something like that, and it's going to feel weird, but the name I'm going to give you is Joe Flacco, quarterback for the Bengals, rostered in 33% of Yahoo leagues, 18% of starting lineups. So guys, just hear me out. Like, I do normally go with the dual threat guys, but I think Flacco still checks the box in of having potential value the rest of the way, because if we look at him from 2023 to 2024, excluding the 4 games with the Browns to start this year, he's averaged 17.6 fantasy points per game. You know where that would put him right now? QB 14 on the year. He'd be in the same bucket as Jared Goff. Okay, so let's include the 4 games from the Browns. Flacco was part of that, 15 fantasy points per game. So that's the downside. But man, let's look at the 2 games with the Bengals, 22.4. I think his ceiling case the rest of the way until Joe Burrow comes back, which is much later in the season, Ian, is he could be in the same range as Matthew Stafford, man. We're talking about an offense that's throwing the ball. They're going to throw the ball in the red zone. We've got 2 really good wide receivers. We've got a pretty big sample here, other than the 4 games with the Browns this season, of him being a good quarterback. So, I mean, I'm leaning into it. The Bengals like to throw the ball all the time. Like, we're going to have some more weeks coming up where people are going to have a lot of buys. There's going to be a chance, like, you could flip Flacco. Potentially, you might even use him again. So, Xfinity best ceiling this week, Ian, of 20 fantasy points. Not as high as the guys that run around. And so I get that. But the median's at 16.2. Like, with how much they like to throw the ball, and that's a big part of it, how committed they are to throwing, like, that's a big thing for Flacco. And again, I think he just fits really well with this style of offense. Shotgun. Remember, guys, the first cup of coffee with the Browns, that offense was designed for Deshaun Watson. Kevin Stefanski had moved away from more of the under the center, play action, everything looking like run, to really, modify the offense for Deshaun Watson. And so that's the offense they had installed, and Flacco thrived in that. This year was a change in that offense. Well, now he's back in another type of system where he's getting to sit back and survey the field. And I think that matters a lot for a quarterback like Flacco.
And reminder, guys, hey, they have to pass every game. Their defense can't slow down anyone. I don't think that's going to be changing anytime soon. So maybe the Jets are the exception to the rule that the Bengals defense cannot stop anyone. But man, just looking at their schedule the rest of the season, Dwain, I'm with you where I could see Flacco having Stafford-esque production, because they're playing a mix of defenses we're not scared of, or teams who I think are going to score enough to really just force Cincy to keep their foot on the gas. After the Jets, they get the Bears and they have their bye. Then they get the Steelers again. And then it's Patriots, Ravens, Bills, Ravens, Dolphins, and Cardinals through the Week 17 Fantasy Championship. Wheels up for Flacco, for Higgins, for Chase, and all parties involved. Maybe even get Joe Burrow back in December. What a story that would be. For my hard cheater, though, I'm going even further down the ranks, guys. Saints quarterback Spencer Rattler. Give me 250 yards, and not 1, not 2, but 3 touchdowns against Vita Vea and company in Tampa Bay. Look, we talked about Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed and everything they can do, but you got to give Rattler a little bit of credit at some point for Olave being a wide receiver 2, for Shaheed being a wide receiver 3, and for Juwan Johnson even being the tight end 17 in fantasy points per game this year. So looking at Rattler, and I even, my 10 things article, Dwain, I kind of highlighted Rattler early, and I was like, okay, put some respect on his name. I realized his timing isn't the best because he just turned the ball over 4 times against the Bears, but that really was out of the norm. Before last week, he only had 1 interception and 2 fumbles in the previous 6 games. You look at Rattler, and no, his numbers aren't incredible, but we shouldn't be holding him this top 10 standard. His EPA per dropback number is better than the last 4 quarterbacks picked first overall. His big time throw rate is better than the last 3 MVP winners out here, guys. So no, I'm not saying he's going to have a better career than those guys, but at a minimum, man, Spencer Rattler has proven capable of fielding a functional, if not even good, real life offense. I know the wins haven't been there. We've only got 1 and everything, but really just have liked what I've seen from the guy. We've always known he has a ridiculous amount of talent. He was the number 1 quarterback in his class for a reason. Yeah, man, he's playing great. Let's go.
Yeah, I considered him as well, because technically he actually does check the other box. Now, he's not like Jaxson Dart or anything, but he will scramble around. Taysom Hill gets out there and is going to steal any kind of design play that they might want to use, to give you a rushing touchdown. But Spencer Rattler could do it, man. He's athletic enough that if you spread the field out and make the defense worry about the receivers, like, he could get into the end zone. So I do really like this call, and he is playing better and better. Again, to your point, I know the turnovers came last week, but in fantasy, what we care about is starting to see that connection with the wide receivers, and we're seeing the yardage start to move up, and then we're seeing the potential for more touchdowns. So I really love the call for Spencer Rattler this week. And in fact, he's someone that I will be using if I play some daily fantasy this weekend. I like stacking up Spencer Rattler.
I was about to say, man, we mentioned that tier. Okay, Dart, Love, Flacco, Rogers, and then Mariota. After that, I'm inclined to go with Rattler over CJ Stroud, over Michael Penix banged up, over, Tyrod Taylor and Tua's of the world. Mac Jones maybe deserves the benefit of the doubt, but even that's a toss-up, man. We know that Houston defense is sick.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think he's right there in that range. I probably need to move him up a little bit as well. And again, like he is a guy that can go out there and run for 20, 25 yards as well. And maybe we get lucky, man. It's a red zone scramble that he punches in for a touchdown. Like he is running around enough that it could happen.
And quick reminder, guys, if you want to check out all those rankings, utilization tools, and so much more, well, hey, you can get a year's worth of free viewing pleasure for all those things. All you have to do is go to fantasylife.com/comment to get a full year of Fantasy Life Plus for free, okay? All you're going to have to do is download the comment browser by Perplexity. It's actually a pretty sweet and useful tool. And then with that, yeah, a full free year of Fantasy Life Plus sounds like a pretty great deal to me. So make sure you guys check that out. Again, fantasylife.com/comment. Dwayne, let's close things out with a look at this week's tight ends. Breaking down the week 8 ranks here on the Fantasy Life Show. We got our top 12 tight end rankings on the screen right meow, headlined by Tyler Warren, the tight end 1 in your hearts and also in our fantasy ranks right now. George Kittle, tight end 2, just seems destined for a bounce back spot. It is National Tight End Week after all, as I'm sure we'll all hear roughly 3,000 times this Sunday on Red Zone. Tucker Kraft, tight end 3, followed by Jake Ferguson. Harold Fannin for now, although David Njoku is looking like he is trending towards playing, but we're going to talk about him more in a bit. Travis Kelce, tight end 6, and guys, honestly kind of has showed up in the best shape of his life. I know we always hear that storyline throughout August and we kind of roll our eyes at it, but Travis Kelce, I kid you not, averaging his most yards after the catch per reception since pre-2020. Obviously helps having Worthy and some of the wide receivers making plays, but really has been great stuff from Taylor Swift's husband or fiance, whatever. Dalton Kincaid, tight end 7, Kyle Pitts, tight end 8, Oronde Gadsden sitting there at tight end 9, been talking him up all week. Dallas Goedert, Kate Otten, and Mark Andrews rounding out the top 12. Let's go ahead and talk about, though, Kate Otten, Dwayne, tight end 11, again, one spot ahead of Mr. Andrews. It's just this wild phenomenon, man. I cannot really remember another tight end who just is a complete zero when all the wide receivers are healthy. And what do we say, man? Like, if you're a great player, you earn targets, okay? Because, quarterback's throwing the ball to you, you get open, you deserve targets. He doesn't get targets until Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are out. And then all of a sudden, not only is he getting targets, he's making the most of them. So talk about Kate Otten here in a winnable matchup against the Saints.
Yeah, I will just say with tight ends and slot wide receivers, we can see these spikes from time to time because they play a lot underneath the coverage. Okay. And now game script and things also dictate this. But if the opposing team gets ahead, like what we saw for the Buccaneers against the Lions, they're just basically saying, we're going to keep giving you those throws against, Detroit secondary because they didn't want to give up a big play. And so Kate Otten just kept getting target after target. But I will say with Baker, it's more than that. When we get into these games where they don't have these other options, he will lock onto him even when he's in man coverage, and he'll put it in there on tight coverage stuff. So in these games where we don't have the other weapons, he doesn't just get the checkdowns, he gets those underneath the coverage, but then Baker does redirect his attention to him even in tight coverage. He's willing to sling it in there. We know Baker's willing to do that with everyone, guys. He doesn't discriminate. He will throw it into tight coverage for all of his wide receivers, like Buka, Tez Johnson, Mike Evans. Kate Otten's also included when the other guys are out. So 21% target share, man, over the last 2 games, and that's pretty much representative of what the wide receiver core is going to look like this weekend. So yeah, I look at Kate Otten as being a low end tight end 1 streaming option. He's got a 16.1 Xfinity best ceiling, man. That's better than some of the wide receivers we just talked about. And guys, I will tell you this, tight ends on a very heavy bye week scenario like this can be a cheat code if you're allowed to use them in your flex. If you go look at our projections and use the flex projections, and you can even use the ceiling stuff, because sometimes there are tight ends that like the ceiling is going to be worse. It's just their median projection that's better. So you can sort it some different ways. You can also use the start sit tool that will tell you these sort of things. But man, if you can flex a tight end, and I did it over in our league that Jake Seeley runs, the flex leagues, and I'm carrying 3 tight ends this week with all the buys, man. I'm starting 3 of them because they actually project better than the wide receivers, and Kate Otten is one of those names.
I was about to say, we were laughing, messaging back and forth last night about one of our real-time sports teams that just has like 8 or 9 players hurt or on bye. Like, it is a complete skeleton squad. Probably going to be flexing a tight end there in that one. So, hey,
We are.
credit to Kadon, guys. He did not post a top 30 finish in the first month of the season. Last 3 weeks, tight end 13, tight end 17, and tight end 11. So, again, not world-beating numbers like he had last year, but those could be on the table as well. And again, one football to go around. The guy throwing it happens to be pretty good at his job. Let's talk about Harold Fannin real quick, Dwayne. Again, facing a Patriots defense that honestly has been so good against the run that teams have had to start throwing the ball more against them. We'll see what happens with David Njoku. Again, been limited back-to-back practices. From hearing Stefanski talk about it, I would guess that Njoku is going to be out there.
Yeah.
Right now, I have him tight end 5. You have him tight end 6. How far down would you be willing to move Fannin if, in fact, we do see David Njoku in the lineup?
Yeah, there's going to be enough other options here, even though we've kind of got a silly situation with 6 teams on bye. He's going to fall outside the top 12, Ian. You know, we're going to be looking at him more as like a high end tight end too. Could still be usable, guys. Like if you're hurting, like this is a guy that they found a role for, even when David Njoku's out there. But the role's way better when David Njoku's not on the field. Man had a 28% freaking target share last week, even though he didn't come through with in the fantasy box score in a big way. So we'll wait and see. But yes, he will fall out. Unfortunately, David Njoku, I would probably keep, not probably, I will keep ranked below Harold Fannin for this game. Number one, David Njoku has not done very much in the offense. Has done a little more with Dylan Gabriel than what we saw with Joe Flacco, but coming back from the injury, still limited this week, Ian. I just don't want to get too over aggressive with Mr. David Njoku.
Again, Mark Andrews was our tight end 12. After that, we have Mason Taylor, Hunter Henry, Dalton Schultz, who we'll talk about in a second.
Dalton Schultz,
Evan Ingram,
I'm
Zach
the only
Ertz.
one on him, but I think it's because when I created the projections this week, I did already assume, and I do think this is happening now, that Nico Collins and Christian Kirk were going to be out. And just real quick on Schultz, let me say, Ian, like I get it. I don't want to trigger you. And I wrote that in the column, guys. This Ian Hartitz is going to be triggered when he sees Schultz's name on this list. And but when you look at him, man, he's the number 2 target for the team this year, and it's not that we think that's ideal. We really think it should be someone else, and like we should be going elsewhere to get more out of the targets. But he's at 19%. He's scoring 12.8 fantasy points per game, man. And last week he scored 18.8 in a game without Christian Kirk, and where Nico Collins left the game with a concussion, he had a 22% target share in that game. So while we talked about Jaylen Noel and Jaden Higgins potentially, having this flashpoint potential earlier, and one of them going off, like the obvious name here that is probably going to get a good amount of targets and like has the best floor of all these in the Texans passing game, as much as I hate to say it, it's going to be Dalton Schultz if we don't have Nico Collins or Mr. Christian Kirk.
I will admit, given the fact the Commanders are getting their wide receivers back, I'm going to bump up Schultz ahead of Ertz to be my tight end 16. But okay, you really, Dwayne, would start Dalton Schultz ahead of Mason Taylor, ahead of Hunter Henry, ahead of even Harold Fannin if Njoku returns?
Yeah, I would. Now again, it's all contingent on Kirk and Collins being out. And the reason why, Ian, as much as we like to talk about the rookies, and you've done a great job of balancing things out and keeping people honest on Twitter. I'm loving your Twitter timeline right now with, the rookie stuff and how we get so excited about them, but we won't get excited about a veteran. This is in the same category, man. So you got to look yourself in the mirror here. The problem is Nolan Higgins, it's not like they've just wrestled away huge roles to this point. So the Texans have clearly not trusted him yet to expand their roles. Now Noel did last week. He had a really nice game, so I'll give him that. That was a positive point. But, man, the one constant here, as much as we don't like it, is Schultz.
Man, if only Brevin Jordan was healthy, he could do something about this, Dwayne. I must reluctantly agree that Dalton Schultz is a quality streamer, at least for this week. Banged up 49ers defense. I was shocked at how well they played against the Falcons. I would not expect that to become a weekly occurrence, but we'll see what happens. Let's get to your Sicko start, Dwayne. Again, one of those big injuries we mentioned at the top certainly going to be in play here, and it is important to remind everyone, check out our injury roundup article on fantasylife.com on Friday, because your Sicko start, Dwayne, is very much injury contingent here.
Yeah, and we are going to go to the rookie well here with Colston Loveland, and it is our second Bear. So what could go wrong, Ian? Our second Bear player in the Sicko starts. Man, he's only rostered in 22% of leagues. He's only in 4% of lineups, and we're trending towards not having Cole Kmet for this game. I mean, he hasn't practiced yet. So if you look at the rookie supermodel, guys, you can check it out over on fantasylife.com. But essentially, it's a model that I've built that looks at which factors for a collegiate player in their career most correlates to future production in the NFL. It doesn't just look at their collegiate production. That's one thing. And it adjusts for their age, for their competition, for the other players that were on their team. It adjusts for all those factors, but it also accounts for film. And so we're using a lot of different factors here to grade these players. And if you look at Colson Loveland, man, since the inception, or the model goes back to 2018, he's the number 3 rated tight end in the model at an 88. And so Brock Bowers is a name that's ahead of him here. But this is one of the best prospects that we have seen. He actually graded out slightly ahead of Tyler Warren this season. And so it's just a talent profile that we like, that it looks like he's probably going to be in a larger role this weekend. I would guess 70 to 80% route participation. And with the way DJ Moore has really struggled, with the fact that Olamide Zaccheaus is not doing a lot with his opportunities, I really think that if he comes through in this spot, like, it could open the door. And who knows, maybe Cole Kmet's out for a few weeks and there's some extended run here for Colson Loveland. So not a crazy ceiling. I still remained, pretty conservative with Loveland. The ceiling is 11.3 this week. But this one is more about, hey, you would take that if you got it, especially if you suddenly thought that, man, now Colson Loveland is the starting tight end for the Bears the rest of the way. Because again, every waiver, if this guy goes off, Ian, for 6 catches and 60 yards and a touchdown, he'll be at the top of every freaking waiver wire column next week. So you're just getting a head start on it.
And guess what? You could flip him for something. Okay. If Dalton Schultz has that same line, probably not going to be able to flip him the same way. Even if we see both teams but just seriously, you know what I'm saying? Like, even if we see both teams get those injured guys back, the Colson Loveland rookie effect would certainly be in play there. So, hey guys, this Bears Ravens game right now, assuming Lamar Jackson is in there, which Vegas is, 49.5 point game total. Only the Cowboys and Broncos have a higher over under as things rest at this moment. For my Hartitz heater, I'm going to the guy who I believe, Dwain, is actually number 2 in that rookie tight end supermodel. Give me Kyle Pitts finally getting that true eruption that he's been building towards this entire season. 7 catches, 110 yards, and yes, a touchdown on American soil against those Miami Dolphins that just seem ready to be pretty much done with this season at this point. I know I'm pretty much done. Go ahead and watching them. By the way, I know I'm talking about Kyle Pitts. Does Tua Tagovailoa actually think he's a good quarterback? Because, Dwain, I've seen the quote earlier where he was like, I can't do half of what Josh Allen can do. And then yesterday or whatever, he was saying like, yeah, I couldn't throw the ball to Jaylen Waddle because I can't really see over the line of scrimmage. Just baffling press conference etiquette from Tua Tagovailoa over the course of the past month, man. But all that aside, I am loving me some Kyle Pitts. Again, it's a situation where the Dolphins, you guys know their secondary sucks. Also very bad against tight ends, specifically bottom 10 in that. And just whether it's Michael Penix or Kirk Cousins, man, just I've been so impressed with what we've seen from Kyle Pitts, really from week 1. I know we haven't gotten to huge numbers yet, but he just finally looks like the big, athletic, talented pass catcher freak that we've been chasing ever since this dude came into the NFL. I don't know if it was that meniscus issue that really made him look like such a hobbled version of himself these past 2 seasons. No more, Dwain. I love it. Falcons, 4th best matchup in terms of combined passing yards per dropback when, again, comparing versus the Dolphins. Give me Kyle Pitts blowing up. Are you with me?
Yeah, dude, I love it. 15.9 Xfinity best ceiling this weekend. So he's right there in range with all the top guys. To your point, just looks better. That's the big takeaway. Like, you guys know, I'm a data guy, but I try to watch all these players too. And Kyle Pitts really looks like a different player versus what we've seen over the last 2 years. Just a more fluid athlete, just the cutting ability, just looks natural, is the biggest thing I would say. It's not like he's making these crazy moves, but he just feels less rigid, just feels more fluid. And so love what we're seeing from Kyle Pitts. Like, he's right now, man, he's the number 2 option in this passing game behind only Drake London. Obviously, we've got Darnell Mooney coming back to health, but Pitts looking really good. Obviously, Bijan going to get his passing targets as well. But, man, it's a diverse offense too. That's the thing that's tough. Defenses can't really key, honestly, on any of these guys, because once you plug one hole, man, another leak is going to spring up. We really just need Michael Penix to get going. Just been too inconsistent this far. So if he could just kind of find his groove, that would be fantastic.
Falcons, unfortunately, one of these teams where I think they can beat just about anyone during any given week. We saw that against the Bills, and also can lose to just about anyone, as we saw when they got blanked by the freaking Carolina Panthers. Still one of the more baffling results I have seen this season. So, guys, that's going to wrap up the rankings edition of the Fantasy Life Show. We appreciate you guys tuning in. But now let's get into some Xfinity start sits. As always, shout out to our friends over at Xfinity, brought to you by Xfinity. Imagine all your football all in one place. Easy Xfinity, imagine that. You guys have been sending us some start sit questions throughout the show. Already got to a few, so we thank you as always. But Dwayne, let's get to the rest. From Matt Carmody, we do have need to start two between Aaron Jones, Woody Marks, Oronde Gadsden, and Jawan Jennings. This might be one of those situations that you were talking about where maybe we do lean into the tight end.
Yeah, so sorry, it's Aaron Jones, Woody Marks, and who are the others?
Oronde Gadsden and then Jawan Jennings.
Yeah, so Jennings, man, is interesting because he had a nice target share last weekend. Like, I'm so confused by Jawan Jennings. Like, we think he's healthy and he has a bad game. And then he says he's playing with 74 broken ribs, and 3 ankle sprains. And he comes out and he has like a 30% target share. I do lean to Oronde Gadsden here, Ian. It is a close call. If you're looking for the absolute ceiling, I still think he's probably the play as well, just because we saw the ceiling last week, man, and it was really good. The dude went off for a massive receiving total, gave you almost 30 fantasy points. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Oronde Gadsden.
And he did need 2. I think the other one would probably be Woody Marks, but again, it would be close between Marks and Jennings. Jones would be the one guy I just kind of want to wait and see what his role is for a week because he could be eased back in.
With Marks, so he projects better than Aaron Jones, but what you guys have to understand, the reason why is I don't know for sure what to do with Aaron Jones. So in those scenarios, I try to be a little bit more conservative, but there's definitely a world where if it's your gut that you think, hey, Aaron Jones has been, on IR, he should be fully healthy. He's probably conditioned. He knows the offense. He's ready to rock. He's a better player than Woody Marks. So I will tell you, this is one of those scenarios where even though the projections are going to tell you one thing, there's a reason why, and it's that I have to be conservative. And it's also going to show Woody Marks as a better ceiling, but it's due to the nature of the rules we play by. But if you ask me straight up, who has a higher ceiling, Aaron Jones or Woody Marks? Dude, it's Aaron Jones. He's a better player.
Yeah. He is. Again, I'm leaning Woody and Gadsden for this week, but Dwayne does make some compelling points there. From Eric,
and the
half
model
PPR.
does too, so I think those are the picks, but just saying that on Jones.
From Eric, half PPR toss-up. Just first of all, great etiquette, Eric. I love this. He's telling us the scoring settings. He's telling us it's a toss-up. We're not trailing. Just great job by you. An example, everyone. Which of these 3 guys, if any, would you start Jordan Addison over? We got Quentin Johnston, Jaylen Waddle, and Michael Pittman. I don't think I would start Jordan Addison over those guys. You have yourself 4 top 24 wide receivers. So, again, it's a pretty good option pool.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now with the settings. And again, yes, great job. I show the order here as Michael Pittman, Jaylen Waddle, Quentin Johnston, Jordan Addison. And this is running the start sit tool does run off of our aggregate projections. If you were just running it off of mine, it would have Quentin Johnston at the top of this list. But yes, very clearly here, Addison does not get over the top of any one of those guys.
Mentioned earlier to do dirty. As much as we do like the Alec Pierce boom upside this week, we do have Romeo Doubs ranked a little bit ahead. Kamani Vidal versus Jordan Mason tonight. Mentioned that as well. Leaning towards Kamani Vidal, but again, it is close. Aaron Jones versus Jordan Mason being back, certainly playing into it. And then, yes, Alec Pierce over Darnell Mooney in this spot. From Johnny, we did answer that one as well. Look at us getting ahead of things. It was Devontae Smith over Jordan Mason and Rico Dowdle. Dwayne, though, from Tyler, another flex tight end question. Oronde Gadsden or Tez Johnson for their last flex, half PPR. Good job, Tyler, being on top of the waiver wire.
Yeah, man, we were actually forced. We're forced with this decision in some of our lineups as well. But man, I'm going with Gadsden. I really love Tez. I really do, but I like Gadsden here. I will say the projection model does give a higher ceiling to Tez Johnson. And the reason why, guys, is we do this at the position level, and we look historically based on the quality of player. There's a percentile based on where we have them projected, and it looks across all their data points, and it projects a range of outcomes for their receptions based on their targets, their yards based on the baseline, touchdowns, all those things. And wide receivers, historically, they just have a bigger range of outcomes here. I will tell you, the one thing this model doesn't know about Oronde Gadsden, is he's a receiver, Ian. And so, I mean, I know we're calling him a tight end, but the dude is a freaking wide receiver. So Tez Johnson, though, does come in with a slightly better ceiling at 19 point. It's pretty significant, actually, 19.2 versus 17.5. So if you're in a toss-up, I'm going Gadsden. If you're the favorite, I'm going Gadsden. If you're leaning pure ceiling, even though I do like Gadsden, we saw it last week, I could see going Tez just because Tez is a big play waiting to happen. And we also saw over the last 2 weeks, man, even though he's hit the big plays, there's been a couple of others that were very near misses that would have made him an even higher fantasy points per game player in these 2 starts that he's had.
And the way I have it in my ranks, guys, like I have a tight end tier where Gadsden's at the bottom of it. I got some running backs. And then the next wide receiver tier is Tez Johnson. So it is a very close call. I'm with Dwain the way he broke that down. Give me Gadsden unless you are looking for that true boom performance. Just a couple more. We do have Albert wondering if we should go with Alec Pierce or Kyle Monungai in full PPR. Again, DeAndre Swift got back to practice, so we are projecting him to play. And accordingly, yeah, we're going Alec Pierce.
Yeah, that one's easy. Alec Pierce, slam dunk.
From Sam, Dak Prescott or Bo Nix? We have Dak ranked higher. Is there any sort of, element of, trailing, kind of going in this, Dwayne?
No.
Like toss up or no, just Dak?
Yeah, so I'll tell you this, like the projection model has Bo Nix ahead, and this is across me and Friedman. We do have Dak ranked higher. So this is guys where rankings and projections can kind of come at odds. What we know, Friedman and I, when we're doing, and Ian and everyone else, we're doing the ranks, it's like, okay, like look what Dak's done, but we're docking Dak for playing against the Broncos and the projections. So it comes down to like, how much do you really care about this matchup versus what you think about, Dak has done over the last month. And what the projection model does, it gives more to what Dak's done, but it's going to impact him a little bit more with the matchup that we have against the Broncos. And guys, we just saw Bo Nix go off against this defense, so it could still definitely happen. But I will say the higher ceiling does belong to Bo Nix here. 32.8 fantasy points. He runs more than Dak Prescott. He's got the easiest matchup here. So a boom game for Bo Nix where he went completely nuclear is going to have a higher ceiling. Now, what I would say, Ian, is how likely do you think Bo Nix is to hit that ceiling game versus just feeling really good about Dak's ceiling, which is 28 fantasy points. So I do think it comes down to whether you're trailing or not. If you are the dog, I would go with Nix. If you're in a situation where you like the matchup, you're a toss-up or whatever, I'm going to go ahead and stick with Dak Prescott. How about you?
I think that's the right way of looking at it. Again, we just saw Bo Nix score the second most points of the season, I think only behind that massive Trey Tucker game, from week 4 or whatever. So we saw the ceiling there with Bo Nix. And hey, this best game of the year came against the worst defense they faced in the Bengals. It would make a lot of sense again if we see him put his best foot forward here. I do think it's not going to be this week. I don't think he's coming back, but the Cowboys are starting to get a little bit healthier on defense. They got Demary and Overshown coming back, guys. And if you have not seen this dude play, please still be healthy following that ACL. This dude, honestly, if you had to just try to find, the best upper middle class man's version of Michael Parsons, I do think Overshown could be that guy. He looked that good last year before he unfortunately got injured. So looked like the Terminator out of practice, Dwayne. Good to have him back. Two more from C. Kim's, picking 3.5 PPR. Gadsden, Goddard, Tucker Kraft, Tez Johnson, Jalen Waddle, who does have some matchup concerns, but it's also Jalen Waddle, man. I don't think AJ Terrell can guard this. I don't think many people can guard Jalen Waddle when things are right. So I would say out of those 3, Jalen Waddle for sure. And then again, it's Gadsden, Goddard, Kraft, or Tez. We have Kraft in there. So then I think it comes back to Gadsden versus Tez, and we were going with Gadsden. So Gadsden, Kraft, and Waddle for you as well, Dwayne?
Yeah, I mean, technically, we've all got that. I mean, Dallas Goedert, like as far as our rankings go,
So
actually
boring,
is
though.
coming. It is boring, but he is coming in ahead. Well, here's the thing: if the Eagles don't have AJ Brown, that changes things for Dallas Goedert, right? And right now we have it projected with AJ Brown in there, so that's what I would say. I'm willing to go Goddard if AJ Brown is out. Otherwise, it's Jalen Waddle, Tucker Kraft. And if you're in the toss-up, you're going with Gadsden. If you're the underdog, you're going with Tez Johnson as your third guy.
Yeah, I know you got to make a decision tonight and everything with Gadsden playing, but it is a tough situation. I feel good enough, though, Dwayne. I think Gadsden – hold on. I think Gadsden and Tez are such a toss-up. Goddard wins out without AJB, so I'm fine falling back on Tez.
That's what I'm saying. I think you're good to wait because you do have Tez, and then you get the other information on Goddard.
Last one, everybody. Appreciate you hanging out. D3 half point PPR. He is an underdog. Look, everyone's already learning. I freaking love you guys. Half point PPR underdog, and he needs one of these three wide receivers: Matthew Golden, Kayshon Boutte, or Troy Franklin. I believe Boutte is actually the highest in our ranks. Again, Browns defense very good against the run. Denzel Ward doesn't shadow guys. Could be a nice game there for Boutte. Troy Franklin, though, your Sicko start, Dwayne. So who you leaning to?
Yeah, the projection model actually likes Golden as the best ceiling here. So I do have this in as an underdog. And was it half PPR or full?
Do you have it was half? Do you have is that assuming Christian Watson is not playing though? Because it sounds like he is coming back.
No, I have Watson in the projections this week.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Interesting.
again,
All right.
it is a very close call. So here's the thing with Boutte. He's living on touchdowns, but he's not getting any targets. So like with Alec Pierce earlier, it was like, okay, he's got an 18% target share. Like Kayshon Boutte's got a 14% targets per route run. So it's literally 100% dependent on scoring a touchdown for Boutte. Troy Franklin does have the better matchup, against the Cowboys, but Matthew Golden is still coming through with the ceiling. And I'll tell you why. You know why it's happening is because he also gets involved on the ground. And so knowing that he has that out to potentially get like a carry or two and potentially break one of those for a long play, he now has two outs. He could score, he could hit a long rushing touchdown, or he could hit a long touchdown over the top. All of these guys are in similar playing time roles, right? They're all around 70 to 80% route participation. But I guarantee you that's why the projection model is putting Golden ahead, is he has one more out than these other two guys, thanks to his involvement getting a carry or two on the ground.
And honestly, Dwayne, I think the tiebreaker, which would honestly cause me to go ahead and move Matthew Golden to the top of this, Dontavian Wicks hasn't practiced all week with the calf issue. So if you take Wicks out of the picture, I feel even better about Golden. Do you concur?
Yep. Even with Watson coming back, yeah, I feel good. And there's other guys they're going to squeeze out of the lineup that have been getting a few snaps here and there, like Malik Heath and guys like that. So even with Christian Watson coming back, I don't expect a huge workload for him in week 1.
And with that, guys, going to wrap up this edition of the Fantasy Live Show. If you got more start-sit questions, though, myself and Chris Allen will be answering them live at 10 a.m. Eastern. We give you all the updates with the weather, the big hot topic items. And again, spend a good hour answering your start-sit questions. So check those out. Otherwise, check out Dwayne's rankings column, all of our start-sits and just rankings as it is, all at fantasylife.com. So for Dwayne, for producer Matt, for producer Tony, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning in. And until next time, take care, everybody.